If you don't embrace change, then you will never learn or grow as a human being. So when I received an invitation to join this impeccable and excellent team that is hosting an interview conversation that shines the light on the life and career of the lady who is known as the Jet Education Services First Lady, I couldn't resist, I couldn't resist, because I believe that we as human beings are living a life that is purpose-driven, and the work really is to be aware and awakened, and so that we may be able to impact positively the lives of those who are around us. She is known as Jet Education Services leading lady and has more than 30 years of extensive experience in project administration. She holds a diploma in marketing management, a certificate in public relations management, and a secretarial qualifications. Kathy has an extensive experience in managing all aspects of a trust and is currently managing Jet administration team and provides strategic support to the executive management here at Jet. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like for you to put your hands together and help me welcome the lady of the moment, Kathy Tracey. Yeah. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing well.
You are doing well. I'm going to take you a little bit back to your early days, to Catherine the child. And I want you to tell me about your aspirations and dreams as you were growing up.
Sure, that's a long time ago. Can I even remember? I grew up in the Cape Town. My mother was actually a domestic worker. And in those days, in the midst of apartheid, we weren't allowed into the homes of the employer because it was a white person. Mm-hmm. So your mom had her back room. So we were in a boarding school, myself and my sister, Catholic boarding school. And we would go and visit my mom over the holidays, but she had to hide us under the bed, so that the madam doesn't know that we're there.
Okay.
Because the madam would come and check through the peephole in the door to see whether she has anyone in her room or not. So that was the start of my life. But it was a beautiful life, As a child, you see these things happening, but you are just being a child and you're just enjoying yourself. But what I said to myself at the time was that I was going to get myself out of that life, mm-hmm. that I was going to be and become someone that my mother could look up to and be proud of.
Okay.
So I always had that at the back of my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I loved my school. I loved going to school. And so when we finished, by the time we finished school, myself and my sister, my mother had moved up to Johannesburg, and we came up with her. And I started my secretarial college, and from there went into the working world. Mm. So that's my starting life.
Then in all that or in that journey of your life, where and when did you encounter Jet as an organization and decided to work for it? How did you come about to learn of the organization?
Well, I had a working history. I mean, from Secretarial College, went into, and I can remember what the company was, Credit Guarantee.
Okay.
in the Carlton Centre. I think we were on the 25th floor, which was quite an experience. The Carlton Centre was the biggest, highest building at the time, probably still is. So I went into the typing pool of Credit Guarantee. From there, I moved on to become a PA, and I remember in a insurance company, and then got to Jet. I think I was in between positions. I was working for a PR company before I got to Jet.
Okay.
And at the time, Jet was established to be there for only 5 years. So they were given this funding. I think it was 500 million at the time.
And which was a lot of money at the time.
At that time, yes. It was just after, was it before we had our 1994 elections?
1992.
Yeah, so Jet was given this 500,000. it was known as the Joint Education Trust at the time. We were given offices, in fact, an office within what were they at the time? The company that was part of the establishment of JET. We had an office there, one little room that we sat in, where we started to get the company going, you know, sort of the start of the company. And in that time, we started looking for, I was just thinking back, the Urban Foundation, because the Urban Foundation, I think, started up this whole discussion around education, then got in all of the partners, the political partners, the corporate partners who were interested in. And I think we were there so we started there Nick started in 1992, mid-1992. I came in 1993 as the PA to the director at the time. Nick was the deputy director. So the director was Prof. Mangani, Jabani Mangani, and Nick was the deputy, and myself, and I think we had one other person, administrator. So the four of us started. We then sourced offices at the Bromfontein Centre, and we moved to the Bromfontein Centre, and we were there up to, and in that time, Prof. Mangani left. Nick became director, so I was his partner, his PA.
Okay, yeah.
But because it was such a small organization, you ended up doing everything. So at the time, it was the Joint Education Trust was a funder, right? So I think we focused on early childhood development, youth development, whole school development, a number of projects that they were interested in funding. So you ended up doing all of the admin work pertaining to when these projects come in, because we would put out proposals. We would get the responses. There would be the shortlisting of who's going to get the funding. And then once the projects came in, the organization started appointing project managers, because they now had to manage these projects. They had to go out and make sure that these projects were being run properly, so that we could then give their tranches as and when it was due. So it was very interesting because you were doing everything. Yeah. And I think that's where I built up my knowledge and my experience.
Yeah. When did you realize that you were going to be with the organization for this long?
So I must admit, when I started with JET, through employment agency, and I was told at the time that this is only a contract for 5 years, I was a bit hesitant about joining, because I'm the type of person that once I'm in an organization, I tend to become part of the furniture, which has happened here, obviously.
Which is yeah, yes.
So my previous employment history was that, 5 years, 6 years. And so I was a bit hesitant about joining, given that the organization was only going to be there for 5 years. But once I got into JET, because I was exposed to so much in the different types of projects that we were dealing with, very rewarding, worthwhile projects, that you could really see the impact it was making in communities, in schools. I sort of got drawn into the organization, where you felt that this is where you're going to stay. This is where I want to be. I don't think I want to move up. My previous experience in work has been very, what's the word to use? Boring. No, really. It was very boring. You're just sitting there doing the same thing as a PA day in and day out. So when I got to JET, it was like so different, Yeah,
yes.
You were exposed to so many different things. And I said to myself, okay, I'm staying here. So PA to, when Shabani left, PA to Nick, and that was for quite a long time until he retired. And in that time, I was doing, PA to him, also project work. I was going out to assess what was happening on the ground. Then with Nick as well, I started seeing that there was a need for, because we were using, when we started to produce our annual reports, we were using an external consultant, and I saw an opportunity there, and I said to him, why don't I go and do a course on desktop publishing so I can produce the annual reports, which I did. And I did that for a while. So then I was called the marketing and PR officer. Okay. Although at that time it wasn't what everyone else is doing in marketing and PR at the moment, because we were still very basic as an organization. But that's what I was called. I got a title.
Yeah. So, Kathy, you are currently providing strategic administrative support to the JET executive management and are one of the longest running board members present, right? So, throughout your entire 30-year stay with the organization, did you foresee the organization still being present and actively impacting the lives of South Africans at this present time and moment?
Well, as I said, initially the Joint Education Trust was going to be there for 5 years only. However, when we got close to the end of the 5 years, the trust still had a lot of money left over.
Okay.
So trustees started, I think 6 months before we were supposed to close, trustees started to have a discussion on what is going to happen to this trust. Do we want to close it or do we want to continue with it? The decision was then made that the trust would continue after the 5 years. The balance of the money would be put into this new trust. It would be called JET Education Services, and it would now become a service provider rather than a funder that it was before. So it meant that we now had to go out and start looking for our own money, right? And that was such a switch from what you were doing, right? We were very safe as funders. You know, we were the boss. We made the decisions, right or wrong, we were in charge. Now we had to go out there and we had to look for funding for us to be viable as an organization. Yes, we had this nice little sum of money as a startup, but we had to add to that. So then that next phase came in for the organization. You now had to find people that could go out there and sell themselves, which is what JET is still doing on a bigger scale. I mean, we were just starting this. So had to appoint additional project managers that had the skills to provide these services as a service provider. So people in early childhood development, the experience of early childhood development, youth development, project implementation. And so that's how the organization grew. So from, I think we were in the Braamfontein Center from 1994 to 2010. And then we moved to Braam Park. And during that time, we went through a difficult financial period. JET wasn't making enough money. JET had a lot of staff that they couldn't really afford to keep on anymore. So the organization went through a retrenchment process.
The very first retrenchment.
The first retrenchment that we had. A number of people were, and I remember I also had to reapply to stay within JET. Luckily for me, I was already managing the Gauteng Education Development Trust project. And based on that, I then, my contract was extended, whereas a number of other people were retrenched. So we moved to Braam Park, smaller office facilities. I think it was also a case of Braamfontein Centre became quite expensive. So we looked for cheaper office space, and we got that in Braam Park with fewer staff members. And at that stage, Nick then retired, and Godwin was appointed as the CEO of Jet.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, so I continued to manage the GDT, and then we moved here in 2015. The Jet directors decided to use the ring-fence money because Jet still had, I think it was about 25 million that it was using at the time to fund initiatives, that Jet thought would be innovative and would make a difference. So you had the projects that you tendered for.
Okay.
But there were also the projects that Jet itself funded. And so they used to use that ring-fence money to do it. But then the decision was made, let's take this money and buy a building.
All right.
Which didn't go down with some of the directors at the time. I remember the finance CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Jim Witherspoon, was totally against Jet purchasing a building. Firstly, he said, you're an NGO, you're not supposed to be owning a building. And secondly, you need to have this money, this cushion, in case things go wrong. But the majority said, no, let's purchase, and we purchased this building. Yeah. Which also brought us into trouble. Because we ran out of money again. And then now we didn't have this ring fence money, we didn't have this buffer, and again we had a period or a session where staff had to be retrenched.
All right. So I'm looking at you've been there, right? And you've seen the glory days of Jet.
Good days.
You've seen the not so glory days of the organization. With now being Kathy, who is sitting here with her 30 years of experience with the organization, what do you think lacked then? And after identifying that, speak from your point of experience and time that you have spent with the organization. What do you think would be or would have been the remedial action to what you would have prescribed as what lacked then?
Are we talking about my personal experience or overall for the organization?
Overall for the organization.
Okay. I think the answer would be to say that maybe in our planning for the organization at that stage, we did not think things through properly. And it got us into a stage where we were really, really in trouble. And James came in. So that's where we are now. And I think also with him is he sees the potential in everyone and tries to push them to get to their full potential, which is a good thing for an organization. It's not a bad thing at all. Sometimes people think that you're being pushed too hard, but, at the end of the day, it brings out who you really are. So,
thank you, Kathy. I just had to ask that because you are a strategic administrative support to the Jet Education Services Management. I am going to check with our audience if they have any questions for you prepared. Kazande, would you like to come in?
I think you've already answered those questions. Though, are there any changes in the organization that made an impact in your workflow?
Personally, for me, I've had so many changes, from when I started in the organization to where I am today, from PA to project manager to PR to marketing, back to projects, and then admin, and now strategic focus. So I think as an individual, you need to know who you are and what your potential is, and try and push that narrative so people can see what you can and what you are capable of. And in that way, you then move along in an organization. And especially as in my case, where I am the stay as long as the furniture type. If you stay in that same position, you get bored eventually.
Yeah, yes.
You know, you don't get motivated anymore because, you know, you're doing the same thing day in and day out. And therefore, you push yourself. And even a small organization like JET, you are still able to find niches that you can fit in that brings you to the next level and to the next level. And I think that's what I've always done.
All right. Tabile, do you have any question for Kathy?
Thank you, Thato. Kathy, we were in lockdown the past 2 years, and I want to know from you, is there any historical moments that you recall that you had to, that shaped the way you had to adapt your work?
Historical? Shoo. You make me sound so ancient.
It's been 30 years, ma'am. So okay.
So we had our democracy where we, you know, we got our new politicians in place, and things changed drastically, I think, for everyone. Not just for us as blacks, but for whites as well, because they now had to adjust to who we are.
Yeah,
true. And we can now stand in front of them and you can't tell me I can do this now because, you know, type of thing. True. So that for me was quite a big change in my life. Not that before that I restricted myself to what I could or could not do within the country. I was always very rebellious, from a child to a teenager to an adult. So I would do what I felt was good for me and not what you told me to do, right? And that was in the face of apartheid, so I would get myself into trouble quite a lot. I had all these white friends, and we would go out partying, and we would get stopped at a roadblock, maybe at night, you know, why are you sitting in the car with this person and that person? And I would be told to get out, and I would have to find my way, you know. But I never used to let that get me down. And the same within the working environment is that you knew what your worth was, even though someone tells you you're not better than them because just of the color of your skin. You knew your worth, and so you acted and behaved and performed in that way. So 1994, obviously, we went into a totally different phase of the country. That made a difference also in the working environment. Historically.
I think there was a big change to South Africa in 1994 that impacted the life of so many people.
Yeah, and things just changed each year. I mean, people adjusted. You either liked things or you didn't, where the country was going to. It depended on the individual. I think changing for me within the working environment was just me trying to get to a point where I felt that I was doing things properly. You know, I was working at my potential. And especially when you're in an organization for so long.
Yeah.
You know, you had to make the difference each time. What do I want to do next? What is available within the organization that I can or cannot do? And then you decide on a plan, how are you going to get there, and you do it.
Basically.
Which I speak to you constantly about.
Yeah, you do. I had to ask.
In short, embrace change, and then you will grow in your life as well as your career. Simple as that. So, Kathy, JET currently has a brilliant set of young upcoming managers, and I would like for you, as someone who I would view to speak from the realm of a very glorious 30 years of experience in the organization. What is it that you would advise or give as advice to the young upcoming managers here at Jet Education Services?
Yeah, I think I've already, I think, spoken around that. It's about pushing yourself. It's about finding opportunities, exposing yourself to whatever comes around so that you are noticed, right? Because if you keep yourself in a little corner and sitting there in front of your desk and, you know, you don't lift up your head and you don't listen to what is going on around you, you're just going to stay there forever. So it's about exposing yourself to opportunities, about proving yourself, right? It's not just about being a loudmouth, you know. The one that speaks the loudest is going to move on. It's not about that. It's about proving yourself constantly. JET is a small organization, so the opportunities are not many, but the few that there comes around, I think you should grab with both hands.
Then finally, if you were to live for the next 100 years,
oh gosh,
Kathy, what would be the most cherishable moment that you would take with you, that you experienced here at JET?
I think for me, having been here at JET is just having been able to move with the times, right? Not just sitting in one position and, you know, becoming part of the furniture, so to speak, but actually looking for opportunities and finding my niche within that. For me, that I don't think if I had been in another organization that I would have been able to do what I was able to do here. And when I say able to do here is move from the one position to the next, explore, see where I'm going to fit in, find the right space, and then know, okay, this is where I want to be and this is what I want to do moving forward.
I have another question from the audience. Melissa, would you like to come in?
Thanks, Thato. Kathy, I wanted to find out, have any experiences at JET changed the way you think about education and how it's impacted South Africans?
Definitely. I think JET itself has made a huge impact on education, just with the projects that they have gone out and implemented within communities. The sad thing about NGOs going into communities and trying to make a change is the minute they leave, when the project comes to an end, they just go back to their previous way of operating. And, you know, you find that it's a whole lot of money that's been poured down a hole, and it just disappeared over time. That's the sad thing for me about as organizations, as NGOs, trying to make an impact in education. But I think just the fact that we do have organizations like JET trying to make that difference, and at times succeeding, it's something that we need to continue to. We should not get despondent if we don't always get the results that we want to.
Well, I for one know that we are surely making an impact. My mother is in the Northwest Province, and my sister's daughters are attending in this school. One time she calls me to say, Amanda came with a book and it's written JET Education Services. It's maths. Do you have the memo? And I'm like, I'm not in the project. I don't know. You know.
Okay.
So yeah, we do make an impact and are visible, like you say. Ashley, would you like to go in?
Kathy, congratulations on 30 glorious and illustrious years. When I started at JET, you were known as the active lady. What keeps you young?
I would say you are as young as you feel or as old as you feel. You know, if you want to be old, then you're going to project yourself as being old. So keeping yourself young. I mean, I don't run anymore, but I do the power walking now, which is my next phase in life, you know. So the old bones can't do the running anymore, but the old bones can still move. And so I belong to what is called Run Walk for Life.
Okay.
And I do my walking, my power walking. I think I just feel young, you know. I tend to refer to old people as old people, but I'm also old, but I don't feel old. And I don't think I'm old. So it's all mind of matter. It's how you think about life that leaves you or puts you at a place that you want to be and not where people put you in. I mean, you hear people saying, oh, that old lady, 65. And I'm like, 65 is not old. You know, but it's how you feel. If you feel old at 65, then you're going to be old at 65, and you're going to look old at 65. And it's the same within where I am here at JET. I still feel that like I'm 20 years younger, you know.
You can still run another 30 years.
And your nails are popping.
Absolutely.
You know what? You are really living your the explanation that you just gave. You don't look your age at all. At all.
Okay.
The next question is from Nick.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. What sorts of changes do you envision for JET, your team, and the people who come after in the next 30 years?
I think JET has got a great history. You know, when James came in, he's also gone out into the rest of the world, into Africa, to Europe, and so on. Starting to create a name for the organization. So JET is starting, the JET name is now going across the borders. And I see that's where JET is going, right? We are getting in more projects, international projects, and we therefore create a name for ourselves internationally. And we find that JET's name comes up first for when an international funder considers giving funding to South Africa. So people are coming to JET rather than JET going out and looking for it. And I think that's going to be JET's future. Internally as well, we are carving a very good name for ourselves as an organization. So I think JET is going places, definitely going places.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for allowing us the time to poke into your life as a human being and as someone who has dedicated 30 years of their life to this organization that we currently also serve in. Thank you very much for your contribution, ma'am.
You're welcome.